Item 10C, review, report, and authorize process for the disposition and development of vacant lots within the Crestmoor neighborhood.
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, over the last several months, staff, along with residents, have been addressing the various rebuilding, restoration issues in the Crestmoor neighborhood following the devastating PG&E gas line explosion and fire that occurred in our community on September 9th, 2010. As the Council is well aware, at that time, there were a total of 38 homes that were totally destroyed or that were determined to be a total loss. And there are now, or there have been rather, in the immediate aftermath of the fire, 38 vacant lots in the neighborhood. We've been very pleased to see the progress in recovery, rebirth, and rebuilding of the neighborhood. And a number of those lots have progressed through their owners and with the direct hands-on support and assistance by city staff, have progressed to the point of occupancy and/or substantial construction. And we now are at a point where property owners have had a sufficient opportunity of time to evaluate what they want to do, and for at least the vast majority of these lots, individuals have either returned and rebuilt, are planning to return and are planning to rebuild, or they have decided not to return and not to rebuild in the neighborhood. As you are also aware, PG&E had, at an early stage following the explosion, embarked on a program to assist residents of the neighborhood who were confronted with a decision about whether to return and rebuild by offering to purchase any properties whose owners decided not to return. Over the course of the first period of time, PG&E purchased a total of 5 lots, and as of a year ago, at the time that the city entered into a restitution settlement agreement with PG&E, those 5 lots were transferred to the city as part of that settlement agreement that the City Council is well familiar with. Over the past year, PG&E has acquired an additional 7 lots. That brings to a total of 12 lots, which have been purchased and for which there are no plans for the property owners to return and rebuild themselves. There's a table in the staff report that you have, and the map that's projected on the wall behind me gives a visual overview of the status of each of the 38 lots, whether it is either in progress or has been redeveloped by its owner, whether it has transitioned to via sale to PG&E. And there are just a very small number of lots whose status has as of yet not been determined. And those properties are listed as well on the map and in the staff report. At this time, there are only 2 lots of the original 38 where the property owners have not yet decided what their ultimate future plans are. So we think it's an appropriate time to be discussing and determining how the city and PG&E should proceed to resolve the future of those lots that went into PG&E's ownership. The other, and probably the more pressing issue, is that we're now 2.5 years approximately from the time of the explosion and the fire. And during that time, while there has been a great deal of progress, both by individual property owners in terms of rebuilding their homes, reestablishing, restoring their lives, there's been a great deal of ongoing construction activity in the neighborhood, both on the private development side, as I mentioned, as well as on the, what would I call the public development side, with our various projects to rebuild, repair, and improve the infrastructure throughout the entire Crestmoor neighborhood that was impacted by the incident. Residents in the neighborhood are rightfully and somewhat vigorously expressing their concern about the length of time that they have already had to endure the impacts of ongoing construction activity, and frankly, they've been expressing their concerns about how much longer this is likely to go on. At the current time, we estimate approximately another 18 months worth of public construction to fully rebuild, restore, and improve the infrastructure throughout, as I indicated, the entire neighborhood. And it is likely, if we start right now, that a similar amount of time will be necessary for private development of the lots that have remained vacant and for which there are no current plans by the property owners for their redevelopment. At the January 23rd town hall meeting with the Crestmoor neighborhood, this issue or question of what are you planning to do about these vacant lots and when will they be developed, and we want to see these lots developed with new homes so that we do not need to continue to be impacted both by ongoing forever construction as well as the visual reminder of the fact that devastation occurred in the neighborhood and that homes that once stood are no longer there. The neighborhood, in short, is expressing a very strong concern that homes be developed on the lots and that that be done as quickly as possible for a variety of different reasons. At that time of the January 23rd meeting, in answer to the questions that were raised on this topic, staff warranted to the neighborhood that this issue would be back in front of the City Council for a final determination within approximately 60 days. And that's the reason for this, for the timing of the report to you tonight, and for our request that you consider a specific strategy to address the disposition and the development of those lots. As indicated in the table that you have in front of you, and I indicated before that there are a total of 7 lots that are currently owned by PG&E. There are a total of 5 lots that are currently owned by the city, and of those, staff is recommending and identifying 2 lots that we believe may have some future potential value for either expansion of the existing park area footprint or other public use. Staff is recommending that the remainder of those lots and those lots currently owned by PG&E that we move forward in a timely manner and as quickly as possible with a process to develop and put those properties back into private ownership. Staff considered a variety of different alternatives for accomplishing that, including kind of on one end of the scale, putting them out to individual sale. And let me back up and mention that we have, throughout this process, maintained coordination and communication with PG&E, and it has been consistently PG&E's stated preference and interest to be in coordination with the city, and we have recently suggested to PG&E that a collaborative process led by the city, such that all of this could be done at once, whatever the strategy is, would be a good idea. We've received initial verbal confirmation through PG&E that that is a desirable approach from their perspective as well. PG&E is understandably very sensitive and interested in avoiding any appearance that PG&E is doing something within the neighborhood and or that PG&E is profiting from their acquisition of the lots that they took ownership of in an attempt to assist property owners who needed alternatives for disposition of their properties. Staff, as I said, has evaluated a variety of options. Among those would be the potential of putting them out to individual sale so that individual private parties could purchase and then develop them. Other alternative would be that the city could actually act as the landowner, the developer. We could acquire by purchase the properties from PG&E, and/or PG&E could act as a developer and develop the properties and then put them out to sale. And we have settled after a fairly extensive evaluation of different ways of approaching this issue and different alternatives. Staff is recommending to you tonight that we pursue a strategy, and again in coordination with PG&E, whereby the city would take the lead and would manage and control a process to select via a request for proposals or RFP process a qualified and capable developer who would then take ownership, would purchase the properties, and would then proceed with their development in a coordinated manner. And it's sort of like a production build or a mini subdivision, whereby the development would occur as near as possible all at one time in order to minimize the ongoing and over time impact to the neighborhood that would otherwise occur if the lots were put out for individual development or they were developed somehow individually, either by PG&E or by us. While we can't suggest to you or to the neighborhood that impact can be eliminated, and certainly a development of this size and scope, along with the ongoing construction activity to rebuild the infrastructure throughout the neighborhood, is going to continue to create a probably substantial impact on residents within the neighborhood. We hope to minimize the timeline over which that occurs and to manage that in the best way possible by, with the approach that we're recommending to you tonight, whereby we would be dealing with one, not many developers, and that we would specify in a request for proposals process and by our management and coordination with the developer going forward, the details of how that development will occur. And again, as I mentioned, the lots would be developed at one time by one developer in order to minimize to the maximum extent possible the timeline over which that development is occurring. Again, staff has had preliminary conversations with PG&E. PG&E has expressed themselves agreeable to an approach whereby we would enter into an agreement that would specify the city's control and leadership of the process on behalf of the lots, both those owned by PG&E as well as those owned by the city. And we believe that this is a workable scenario and one which best meets both the city's, PG&E's, as well as, most importantly, the neighborhood's interests. We're recommending to you tonight that you direct staff to proceed to enter into the agreement I mentioned with PG&E and to move forward expediently with the development of a request for proposals and the solicitation of developer interest, the identification of a selection process, and then that we would work with you further after we've put together a request for proposals and a selection process to move forward with a selection of a developer and a ultimate sale of the properties to that selected developer. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? I think it's important that we get this done as a package and we get this done sooner than later with the least impact to the neighborhood, because they've been through an awful lot. We have a lot more to go, so just my 2 cents. tell us your name and your street, please?
Chuck Zelnick, Merced. I would like to give you three options that I think you should consider. One is I think you should table this item until your next scheduled meeting. I was only able to obtain the background documentation from the city clerk, city manager's office at 2 o'clock this afternoon, which, if my understanding is correct, really nobody in the public's had a chance to review this or even be having an opportunity to come forth. Being that this item has, been an ongoing issue, this is really the first time, as the city manager has told me about town hall meetings, that this council has formally, in a council meeting, addressed this issue prior to going into closed session negotiating with the PG&E. So I would first ask that you table this for 2 weeks so that people in the public have a chance to read this and see if it is. I've talked to a few people in the area who have no clue of what this was all about and how this was coming down. Now, maybe some people do, some people don't. That's my first request. The second request I have is that a little over 6 months ago, I entered into conversations with two people at PG&E and their real estate department. Subsequently, I was forwarded to Mike Olson of Brook Street in regards to the properties that PG&E had owned. At that time, I was told by Mike that the city under their agreement had first right of refusal and that there were people interested in purchasing those lots directly from PG&E. I have an offer still sitting with PG&E, and PG&E has not been able to enter into the next stages of dialogue due to the fact that the city of San Bruno has first right of refusal on all those parcels. In talking with the city manager a couple months back, she explained to me that she has known of other people that had an interest in buying those lots and having them developed in the purpose of getting these lots built and getting this development back where it is. A lot of care was given from the residents that I knew personally that rebuilt their homes. They did a lot of thinking, a lot with their architects, and there's some beautiful homes that they're being rebuilt there all the time. A developer just wants one thing, the bottom line payoff. And you're going to just take cookie cutter homes, change the faces a little bit, but they're going to be the same thing. And it's not going to have the care and personality of people that have been there or people within this town that have lived here. So I think it's really not, the delays have been that PG&E doesn't want to step on the city's toes, generally speaking, as it was explained to me, and that these offers, would like to be handled, but they haven't been able to do it because of the clause of first right of refusal. I'm a little confused. If we're trying to hurry up the process, why are we, slowing them down on selling? I think even if you allow PG&E to sell them, you can also stipulate that proceeds, or let's call it profit that they're making, be put back into the city in another means that is acceptable to the council and to the residents. So it's not like they're going to profiteer off us. They're going to make a profit. They should be able to return it back. If not, it should go into helping the ratepayers pay the exorbitant amount of costs that we're having to pay now for their negligence.
Not going to happen.
What I'm asking then is simply that if you choose to go the path that you're going, that you release the property at 1655 Claremont so that PG&E and I can finish, and if we can't come up to an agreement on a price and terms, then we will, it'll revert back to you. Our terms with PG&E, as we've written a proposal and our attorney has forwarded to them, is straightforward. It's an offer price, 30-day close, it's an all-cash deal. So if we would have been able to do this 6 months ago, we'd be breaking ground on a new home on that lot. So I'm not sure where the confusion is of, I know there's other people that have asked me how I got my information, and they would like to also pursue building in this community. But the whole thing came back to, as Michael Olson explained to me, first right of refusal stopped the door on anybody trying to get through. At least I was able to get into PG&E, talk to the people and say, this offer's sitting there. I'd like to finish negotiating. If they want more than I can afford, I'll walk away in 2 weeks. But we're ready to go, and we've been ready to go. City Manager Jackson explained to me that, this would take several months to get to you guys. You talk about the construction delays, you're talking about putting bump out mediums, or I think it's called traffic calming or something out there. The residents I talk to want no part of it. So I don't know what this all lingering is. What I'd like to do is build a home for my children who are participating in the finances of this, would like to stay in San Bruno where they were born and raised. And my grandson would love to live close by to me. I'm sure I could persuade him to do that. But worst comes to worst, I'd like you to choose, the option that you have on the back, which is let PG&E sell the land, give them a deadline to sell them by, and there's nothing better than private enterprise pushing to get a project built. The developer you risk with, hey, are they going to look at the across from Lenardi's up there? Half that track wasn't built because of financial problems. The ones across the street in the old gas stations weren't built. I'm ready to build, and I'm sure there's other people out there ready to build if they know that PG&E hands aren't tied any longer. So I'd really ask you to consider it. If you don't consider it from the public viewpoint, let's call it, I'd like you to consider it that give me 2 weeks to finish with PG&E. If I can't close a deal in 2 weeks, it'll be back in your hands, and I'll say, well, I gave it the old try and move on down the road. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Comments from the council? City Manager?
Could I just make one clarifying comment? I think my comments were clear that PG&E has been very interested in working collaboratively with the city. The specifics of the agreement that the city and PG&E entered into, that is, they established the community restitution, does not require first right of refusal per se. It is, the wording in that agreement calls for PG&E to coordinate and to collaborate with the city relative to any additional lots that they would acquire. And I think it's fair to say that they have done that, and that that is the extent of our relationship.
Questions or comments? I don't want to be in a position of speaking for PG&E, but I know that they don't want to get involved in the land business at all. They are very sensitive to being in the neighborhood at all, and they just want to get this behind them. And we looked at a number of scenarios. I don't know, Mr. Zelnick, and maybe some other people have some offers out there, I don't know. But a lot of the PG&E issues were just settled with a lot of these residents having to do with lots and settlements. A lot of this was not, the city was not privy to at all. So we're not aware of any of the intricacies of what might have happened with individuals or other entities at all. So, we've talked about this on and off with the neighbors over the last number of months. And I understand where some individuals might want to purchase a lot and build. There's no guarantee that those individuals will in fact build in a timely manner. That really concerns me, because this neighborhood has been through an awful lot and still has some more to go. So I think some type of a package deal in collaboration with PG&E is probably the best way to go. And we still have control over design. We still have control over all of the different things that go into building a home, just like any other place in San Bruno. So that's my 2 cents there.
Mr. Mayor, I agree. As a designer, I'm a little concerned with another 10 different looking houses up there. Yes, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, but there's a lot of different designs up there, and 38 different designs is, to me, is not going to look good. And and whether you change facades and change materials, there are some very nice developments, and especially even in this town with Summerhill and such, that good examples of how a developer can mix and have some continuity in a neighborhood. That was what made this neighborhood so attractive. Many of our neighborhoods so attractive over the course of the years is that they are very similar. And then each owner added their own touch to it. But to go from from the dirt up with something totally different is not it's not appealing to me, really. And so I feel that with another 10 homes that we have control over and have good design guidelines, I believe that an RFP process is the best way to go.
Anyone else? Irene?
I would just like to clarify that the neighborhood people have been informed of all the negotiations that have been going on. They know that we've been talking about the different options that we've talked about with the housing up there. It's like anything else. You can get 10 people in a room and you get 10 different opinions about things. So our job up here is to find the best way that we can to help the process along, to minimize the impacts of the neighborhoods, to get the houses built as quickly and as well as possible. I realize that individuals would like to purchase separate lots. As my understanding is, in some places there's more than one individual who would like the same lot, and part of our problem is, well, how do you deal with that? What's fair? And all those other questions. So all along we've been dealing with how to make it work for everyone. And so I think our emphasis is to get it done as quickly as possible with a good quality result, and while it won't be pleasant for probably 18 months, is that a fair estimate? After that, it's all done. Then there won't be anything after that. So I agree with the process the RFP process that we're contemplating. In that process, we can specify how long, what kinds, square footage. We can specify a great deal of details. Am I correct?
Yes, absolutely. And as I was discussing here a moment ago with my colleague, the city can, up to and including specifying a tract style, all the houses look same or very, very similar, up to a program whereby the houses would have, let's say, semi-custom finishes, or they might be semi-custom built homes, to blend and to bring about a sort of a more coordinated appearance of I don't have the right design tech words.
Don't ask me for buzzwords.
but to make sure that the neighborhood, when it's finished, given that this is a pretty substantial number of additional homes, that the aesthetic of the overall neighborhood is one that fits together, works together, and is consistent with what both the neighborhood as well as the community wants to see. I think the council members' comments are very well taken, and there has been some amount of discussion among the neighborhood as well, and there's everybody has an opinion, so there are lots of different opinions among residents in the neighborhood like elsewhere, that a lot of people just really want to see it back the way it was, and we're already quite a ways from that. So there's an interest, I think, in blending the old and the new and putting together something that people will be happy with long into the future.
Anything else, Michael?
Well, I just wanted to say that it would have been nice probably to have this report available sooner than this afternoon. I think that's a valid point, that this is something that's very sensitive to the community, and having that detailed information available sooner would have been helpful. But I do know at the same time that we've been soliciting the input over a longer period of time, and we have our consultant in the area there where people are able to express comments and opinions, and so I'm going to trust that the recommendation that's in here reflects the wishes of the people in the neighborhood, and assume that that's the best thing for the neighborhood.
Rico?
Through the chair, I'm going to, on what Councilmember Salazar said, maybe to city manager or city attorney, as far as it was properly put on the agenda, staff report wasn't available until this afternoon. So what does that or does that not do as far as meeting any requirements or obligations?
Well,
essence, this is an informational report. There were members of the public here, so they were obviously aware that it was going to be addressed and the topic was going to be addressed. It would certainly be within the discretion of the City Council if you wanted to continue it, but there's no legal requirement that you do so. I would also point out that a number of the other actions that are going to be required for this will also come to the council in public session.
Okay. Hindsight's great. So we can go forward and, we can try to have it more available. I know that, as Councilmember Salazar said, we do have somebody that is up there in the neighborhood. I can speak for a lot of us who've been at many meetings and events, and yes, people have been interested at various times at events that have been emotional, those that have been joyful. It's a delicate situation and I think we've all come to realize it tore our heart out, and it's not going to be easy to put it back together, and we are not going to make everyone happy along the way. And I've come to that peace in my mind, that knowing that we're going to have to do the best we can to get it back to where the best we remember it as and go forward. And I know that one of the concerns that were back when PG&E had 5 lots was, let's get it done. Let's move it forward. Let's bring our community and neighborhood back. And let's just not have empty lots next to my house. And I think this is an opportunity, though it's not going to please everybody, but it is moving the ball the right direction and moving us forward as a community.
So would you like a motion, or do you have direction?
I think we've heard clear direction, but I would appreciate a motion that makes it
Okay.
more
Can I ask
firm.
one last question, if I could? Now, you've made it clear to the city manager that that PG&E is not prevented from selling these lots to individuals or anyone interested. Is that what you were getting at?
Technically, they're not prevented. I think PG&E, they are required by virtue of our settlement agreement, at the minimum, I would say, to consult and to coordinate with the city. And I think that PG&E's actions are very much in the spirit and in compliance with that agreement. And so the fact that they have suggested to residents or to individuals that the city has a first right of refusal is maybe just a use of words that are not specifically articulated in our agreement. I think the intent to work together with the city and not step out and sell one or more individual lots would be, like I said, is entirely appropriate and consistent with our agreement.
I'm just envisioning, even though there's just one person that came forward saying that they're very interested, I envision that there's a whole slew of people out there who are very interested, in that if PG&E were to be, free to do this, that it would be a mess up there. And then there's no control, and who's to say, just because one potential property owner says they're ready to go, that 9 others we'd have no control over. The city would have in the neighborhood would virtually have no control.
I am aware that there are other individuals who have expressed interest in purchasing lots, either from the city or from PG&E. By no means well informed on any specific conversations or the number of conversations that PG&E might have had with individuals, but I think it's fair to say that there are multiple individuals who are likely interested in individually purchasing and developing lots in the neighborhood. And my guess is that there have been some number of conversations. There may be other purchase offers that have been provided to PG&E. I don't know. And that's why we did carefully consider that strategy as an alternative, because we were aware that there is an interest, and I think council members have articulated this well, that like many things that we've been forced to try and address in the best way we possibly can, it's not likely that the solution that we identify as having the best benefit for the community as a whole and for the neighborhood is likely to please everybody.
Yeah, motion?
Motion?
Mhm.
I move that we go forward with, sorry, I move that we go forward with doing an RFP proposal and enough specificity to include time, time limits and all those things that we discussed earlier.
And that includes working with PG&E to collaborate to
Yes.
get it all done.
I'll second that.
Motion and a second on the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry, I just thought of one more thing. Just for the matter of the public record, these homes will eventually be sold to individuals who will hopefully occupy and live happily ever after in them. So we hope that people will pay attention to this process and that they will continue to be interested, and that there will be a great opportunity down the road, we hope, for people who are interested to purchase a home and to participate in making this neighborhood spring back to life.
And I'm sure the city will do its due diligence to alert and let the community know when these
Absolutely.
matters are coming forward, when the time is right, and when their opportunity for purchase is.
Absolutely.